When God says he is preparing you for something big, he rarely starts with the part that excites us. We all love the idea of being blessed, elevated, or stepping into a destiny that seems larger than life. But the truth is, God does not drop greatness on unprepared shoulders. He first takes you through a process that feels uncomfortable, sometimes painful, and often misunderstood. That process is pressure. It is in the moments when you feel pressed on every side, delayed beyond what you think is reasonable, or stretched past what you thought you could endure, that God is actually preparing you. Think about how gold is purified. The raw material has impurities embedded within it, imperfections you cannot see with the naked eye. And yet, in order for that gold to shine, it must pass through fire. It is not the fire itself that destroys it. It is the fire that separates what is pure from what does not belong. In the same way, the pressures you experience are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to strip away what cannot go with you into the next season of your life. That attitude, that fear, that unhealthy dependence on people, that habit of leaning on your own strength instead of God's, all of that must be refined before you can carry what he intends to put in your hands. The reason God uses pressure and process is because the blessing he is preparing you for is heavy. It carries weight. It carries responsibility. And if he gave it to you prematurely, the very thing meant to bless you could crush you. Many people pray for opportunities, relationships, promotions, or platforms, not realizing that those things require maturity, wisdom, and endurance to sustain. God knows the future you cannot see. He knows the enemies that come with the next level, and he knows the temptations that arrive when influence increases. So he prepares you now in the quiet seasons of struggle to be strong enough to handle what's ahead. David is a perfect example. Before he ever held a crown, he held a slingshot. Before he faced Goliath, he faced lions and bears. God was not wasting David's time when he kept him in the fields as a shepherd. He was training him. The very battles David fought in private equipped him for the battle that would eventually catapult him into public recognition. And what is striking is this: if David had refused the process, if he had complained about his hidden season or resented the responsibility placed on him, he would not have been ready to stand before Goliath. Preparation is never wasted. Every pressure, every trial, every waiting season is building the muscle of your spirit, whether you realize it or not. Some of you are in seasons right now where it feels like God has forgotten you. You've prayed, you've worked, you've been faithful, and yet the doors are not opening. But let me challenge that perspective. What if God hasn't forgotten you at all? What if he is refining you? What if the silence is intentional? Because sometimes God withholds certain things, not out of neglect, but out of protection. He is keeping you from stepping into something you're not yet strong enough to sustain. And when you realize that, the waiting season becomes less about frustration and more about trust. Another reason God uses pressure in preparation is because it reveals what's really inside you. When life is easy, it's simple to look strong, faithful, and composed. But when the heat turns up, when you're pressed, what's inside will come out. Pressure exposes your foundation. Do you really trust God, or do you only trust him when the outcome aligns with your timeline? Do you truly believe he is good, or does your faith collapse when the path gets difficult? God allows pressure because he wants to strengthen your faith until it is unshakable. And once you've come through the fire, there is a depth of character, a resilience, and a maturity that no shortcut could ever provide. We see this in the story of Joseph as well. God gave him a dream of greatness, but he didn't place him on the throne the next day. Joseph went through betrayal, slavery, false accusations, and prison. And yet, each of those moments was shaping him for leadership. Had Joseph gone straight from the dream to the palace, he might not have had the humility or wisdom to save a nation during famine. God was not punishing him, he was preparing him. And that is the pattern we see over and over again in Scripture. The promise is always followed by the process. So the next time you feel the weight of pressure, shift your perspective. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Begin asking, what is this shaping in me? Instead of assuming the delay means denial, consider that the delay is divine. It is God's way of getting you ready for something that eyes have not seen and ears have not heard. And here is the most important part. You do not go through this process alone. God walks with you through the fire. He strengthens you in the waiting. He whispers encouragement in the silence. You may feel unseen, but you are not abandoned. In fact, the very pressure you're experiencing may be the clearest evidence that God's hand is on your life. Because if He were not preparing you for something significant, He would not invest so much in refining you. So let me leave you with this. Do not despise the process. Do not mistake pressure for punishment. Instead, recognize it as preparation. God is shaping you into someone who can handle the very thing you've been praying for. And when the season shifts and the doors finally open, you will look back and realize that every tear, every setback, every unanswered question was part of God's strategy to prepare you for something bigger than you could have imagined. The pressure is not a sign of God's absence, it's a sign of His plan. When God says He is preparing you for something big, one of the clearest ways He shows it is through the way He shifts your perspective and redirects your focus. Preparation is not only about external circumstances, it's also about what happens in the mind and the heart. God does not just want to place you in a new season. He wants to transform the way you see yourself, others, and even Him, so that when the blessing comes, you are able to steward it with maturity and clarity. Think about how often in Scripture God calls people into something before they feel ready. Gideon was called a mighty man of valor while he was hiding in fear. Moses was asked to lead a nation while he still doubted his own ability to speak. Peter was told to feed the Lord's sheep even though he had just denied Christ 3 times. What do all of these have in common? Before God changed their circumstances, He changed their perspective. He taught them to see themselves not through the lens of their failures, fears, or limitations, but through the lens of His purpose. That shift in focus is part of the preparation. And this is where many of us struggle, because when God starts preparing us, it often begins with subtraction, not addition. He begins removing things from our lives, relationships that no longer align, opportunities that look good but are not part of His plan, habits that once comforted us but now hinder us. To us it looks like loss, but to God it's focus. He knows that if your attention is scattered, you will not have the clarity to step into what He is calling you to. Preparation often looks like pruning, and pruning never feels good. Yet, as Jesus taught, the branch that is pruned is the one that ends up bearing the most fruit. Now here's the challenge. When God starts shifting your focus, you may feel isolated. People you thought would be with you for the long haul might drift away. The very places where you once felt comfortable may suddenly feel small or unfulfilling. That's because God is expanding your vision. He is stretching your capacity to think bigger, to believe deeper, to live with a greater sense of mission. And He cannot do that if you are still clinging to the familiar. It's not that the old season was bad, it's that it cannot carry you into what's next. Philosophically, this comes down to identity. Much of human struggle arises not from external limitations, but from internal misperceptions of who we are. God cannot pour new wine into old wineskins, not because the wine is flawed, but because the container cannot hold it. In the same way, He cannot entrust you with new opportunities if your old mindset cannot handle them. For instance, if He gives you influence but you still crave approval from people, that influence will crush you. If He gives you wealth but your identity is still tied to possessions, that wealth will destroy you. So God begins preparing you by shifting your focus away from what you have to who you are becoming in Him. This preparation is often subtle. It shows up in the way God convicts you about things you once ignored. Maybe you used to react in anger, but now you feel uneasy even when entertaining the thought. Maybe you used to compromise in areas no one else could see, but now you feel God calling you to integrity even in private. That's not random, that's God preparing you. He's showing you that character matters more than convenience. He's reminding you that who you are in the dark determines whether you can sustain what He gives you in the light. There's also a psychological depth here. Human beings are wired to focus on what we lack, what we want, or what seems delayed. But God teaches us in preparation to focus on what he is doing, even if it is unseen. Faith, by its very definition, is the ability to hold on to what you cannot see yet. And so when he prepares you, he stretches that faith muscle. He allows situations where you can no longer depend on your natural resources, where your intelligence, your connections, or your skills are not enough. Why? Because he wants you to shift your focus from self-reliance to God-dependence. And when you come through that, you discover a confidence that is not rooted in ego, but in trust. Joseph experienced this. By the time he stood before Pharaoh to interpret a dream, Joseph had already been betrayed by his brothers, falsely accused, and left in prison. Yet notice how his focus shifted. When Pharaoh asked him if he could interpret dreams, Joseph didn't say, "Yes, I can." He said, "I cannot, but God will give Pharaoh the answer." That shift in focus away from self and toward God was the very evidence that Joseph was prepared for the assignment. Had he still been caught up in proving himself, he would not have been ready to serve on that level. So let me ask you, what is God shifting your focus from? Where is he redirecting your energy? If you feel him closing doors, understand it may be his way of protecting your attention. If you feel him convicting you, it may be his way of refining your heart. And if you feel him stretching your faith, it may be his way of teaching you to see through spiritual eyes rather than natural ones. The preparation you are in is not punishment, it is alignment. God is aligning your thoughts with his thoughts, your desires with his will, your focus with his purpose. And though it may feel lonely, though it may feel unclear, you can trust that the shift is intentional. Because when the blessing comes, you cannot afford to be distracted. You must be centered, anchored, and focused on the one who gave it to you. So don't fight the redirection. Don't resist the pruning. Let God shift your perspective, because he is preparing you not just for something big, but for something lasting. And here is the truth you must hold on to when your focus is fixed on him. Nothing can derail what he is preparing you for.